big old gulp of Corona. Of course, I have my bourbon and coffee. I do not disappoint.
Woo-hoo!
That should be fun. We, of course, already have a couple of folks joining us in the chat. We have Ed Brewer saying he can absolutely see a virtual con streaming on multiple platforms. The crowd are what keep me always to begin with. Each creator and event will stream their own content, though. The con app. I don't know what the con app. Oh, it's just him spelling con a different way. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. We'll definitely, Ed, be breaking into talking more about virtual cons and the potential of virtual cons deeper down the line of this show. We also have Tehillim29 saying, good to see you all. It's good to see you too, man. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Tehillim.
Just a Rican in his comics, just saying, yo, what's going on, Rob? Thanks for popping by tonight. Nice. There you go.
I got a bunch of Comic-Con paraphernalia. I got my San Diego Comic-Con at home pass. I downloaded it and printed it out. I got the sign that I'll put on my door so that nobody bothers me at home because I'll be attending Comic-Con at home. Please knock quietly. I'm watching a panel. So I'm ready to go for San Diego Comic-Con. I'm looking forward to it. I've never been to San Diego. I've been to New York, of course, with you. Dark Knight had a fantastic time. But if I can't make it to San Diego, man, I can't imagine a better thing than what they're doing. My compliments to the guys putting on the San Diego Comic-Con. The panels, the list online looks great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it does look like it should be some fun. And we were talking before going live a little bit more about it. So you've definitely been getting me more and more invested in it for sure. So it should be interesting. I'm actually pretty stoked for the DC Fandom. That seems like it's going to be pretty comprehensive. And it seems like we're going to be getting more out of this. Hopefully I'm not jinxing myself than we would out of a traditional con.
And I think it's also worth noting, too, that DC has got one up on Marvel this year. Marvel doesn't have a presence at San Diego Comic-Con, not a significant one at all. There's going to be, they didn't have much of a presence in 2018, but this year with DC's Fandom in August, DC has one up on Kevin Feige, which is kind of rare. Kevin Feige is usually ahead of the curve, but this year I think Kevin Feige I think he's playing it close to the vest. I think he's waiting to see what happens with DC Fandom and how it works with San Diego before they make their move. And who knows, we might have a Marvel fandom of some kind in the next 6 months to a year too. We'll have to wait and see.
It'll be interesting. Marvel, I think, is definitely in it because they've had years where they didn't really make a big presence at San Diego. Fine, as much as I am a little bit frustrated at that as a fan. I can't complain. I can't complain. They still managed to do something to get people hyped up. Marvel is a little bit more in the cultural consciousness of the world. So, it goes to show you that maybe they don't need a con presence, but that's something certainly worth talking about later on. Joe's Geek Show just saying what's up. Hope everybody is doing well. We have Aaron VO just saying hey. And Joe's Geek Show reminding me to plug my own video. Thank you, Joe. Much appreciated. Drop my DC Stead Planet #1 review. So if you guys want to go check that out, there's a link in the description below. Feel free to check that out at the end of this video if you feel like watching some more content. But as a teaser, for many of you wonderful viewers who have been sticking with the show, you know that ComicBoom and I are going to be having a pretty monumental debate coming up. And courtesy of our pal Joe crafting an absolutely incredible teaser, I would like to play it for you live right now. So let's see here. Sorry, I'm not super tech savvy. Clearly, there's a reason I wasn't the one that made the trailer. So, hopefully, I can get this to work. And I think we're getting somewhere. There we go. There's the thing. You're seeing it. Hopefully the audio comes through. Is it coming through? So yeah, could everybody hear it? Oh, they said audio is super quiet. Well, I guess we could call that a teaser for a reason, because we're going to be posting that on our channels sometime very soon once we come up with an actual hard set date. So a little bit of a teaser for the teaser. And yeah, with all that being said, I do want to intro us into this big bad show. We do have a couple of other folks joining us. Tim Board saying, still waiting to see what they come up with this year and how well they can do it. But as a fan who lives in Japan, I hope the use of online events become a normal thing, assuming they can do it. Yeah, I imagine it probably takes up a decent amount of bandwidth or whatever to, to get this type of programming really far out. So hopefully, is DC Fandom and all that international? I know, Tim, you're probably looking for your Hawkman squeeze, so I'm interested if that's the case. But okay.
I would encourage people to Google San Diego ComicCon 2020. What to know about San Diego Comic-Con at home. It has links to all the events that are going to be taking place. You can literally print out signs like this to warn people that you're going to be watching the con online. And you can also download your own attendee pass. And I just printed them off offline, and you can online. And there's 15 pages of all the panels that have YouTube links. That it's all going to be free. This is going to be epic, man. I mean, I guarantee that when I was in New York, there were so many awesome panels. Obviously, we couldn't see them all. It's not possible because of all the lineups. As fantastic as it is to be able to go to these fantastic cons, the reality is that you can't enjoy everything. But now we'll be able to. And even if there's an overlap of panels, you can watch. You can go from one panel to the next, and just be just a little bit behind on the whether it's live or not. So I think this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to so many panels at San Diego Comic-Con. There's even panels. I was telling Dark Knight earlier, there's a panel on the Watchmen and the cruelty of masks, it's called. There's topics on everything from the Holocaust, even on latest topics of politics, if you like, to Cartoon Network, Mattel. Various movie studios are going to be there. Various artists, writers, creative panels. It's just there's so much there, and this is going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast.
It should definitely be some fun. And like I said, the more I listen to my pal here talk about it, the more excited I get. So with that being said, I think it's time to intro us up for this episode. Hey guys, welcome to the 49th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics. Whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations, we hit it all this week. I am welcomed and rejoined by my partner in crime, the Canadian Cape Crusader himself, ComicBoom. My brother, it is good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dark Knight. Good to be here.
As always, man. So apropos of all of this pre-show talking, today's episode is titled "The Ghosts of Comic-Con's Past and Future." So we're going to be kind of going over a little bit of our experiences with cons in the past, going over what we're thinking about all of these new innovations like the virtual cons and such, and where we might see Comic-Cons going in the future post-pandemic. And also, depending on how long the pandemic lasts, we could still be seeing more things roll out as a product of that. So it should be interesting. One thing I did also want to address, we did get a very, very generous tip from one of our viewers today. Let's see. I think it is showing. It should be showing. Yes, Aaron VO. He just says, keep it up, dude. I just want to say how much I appreciate you, my brother. Acknowledge you live on the stream and say thank you so much for all of the support. You are always so welcome with your comments and your input on these streams. And again, man, I want to thank you so much for your generosity, because the broke boy got to pay the bills somehow. So it's cool that I can kind of do that talking about comic books. So with that being said, I think it's time to get right into it. So ComicBoom, you have been a comic book fan for quite some time, and I'm curious, what were your earliest memories of going to comic book conventions? Like, what was your first show? Do you remember much of it? How old were you?
Yeah, my first show was in 2004. I mean, I've been collecting comics a long time, but I never even heard of I heard of comic conventions back in the early 80s, but I never actually could find one to go to. My first one was in Calgary, Alberta, and it was around 2000, I think it was 2004, and it was in a really small venue. Just to give you some idea, in 2004, it was a really small venue, and I remember I got things autographed and drawings for free by Pia Guerra, the artist on Why the Last Man. Met Gail Simone before she really got famous, had a long talk with her, and all these, so many things. And nobody was there. Nobody attended it. Flash forward to 2012 in Calgary, 8 years later, and there was 90,000 people, whereas in 2004, when I first went, there was 4,500. It was unbelievable, the difference and the fast growth of the Comic-Con. Absolutely unbelievable. And it was mostly Calgary. My Comic-Con experience has been Calgary. I've been to Calgary and Edmonton multiple years, and then of course I went to New York Comic-Con with you in October of last year, which was phenomenal. And yeah, it's an experience. I gotta say, what about you? What was your first Comic-Con, New York?
No, they have a somewhat local convention at the Mohegan Sun, which is a casino resort. And they hosted a con. They started hosting it a couple years ago called Terrificon. And the first time I went for free with a buddy of mine, because he was able to get free tickets, and it was really nothing special. But geez, man, over the years, they're really starting to stock talent. They opened up a convention center and started hosting guys like Jason Fabok, who I managed to get an interview with because of it. Peter Tomasi, King came last year, Garrett's came last year, Clayman came last year. And even when they were a smaller, and they're still relatively small, but even when they were kind of really coming on the upswing, they had a lot of legends in the business. I mean, you'd see guys like George Perez, Denny O'Neil, Starlin, all those guys. So, I've been enjoying a lot of those. And it's thanks to that convention that I've had some of my favorite interviews ever that I've done, Liam Sharp, Peter Tomasi, Jason Fabok. And then, I've been going to New York Comic-Con for a couple of years, which is something totally different, man. It is entirely its own beast. But I'm wondering for you, Boom, what are like the noticeable differences between something like your relatively local con in Alberta versus something like New York Comic-Con? Because I imagine there's got to be something, that really delineates the two.
Well, just to give you some idea of scope, the Calgary Comic-Con, Calgary Expo, that's what this is a symbol of. And the Calgary Expo has about 90 to 100,000. It grew since 2012, 90 to 100,000 people. New York, I'm not sure what New York is. Is it 3 million? What's New York Comic-Con population? But in any event, it's well over 1 million. Obviously, New York is tied with San Diego. I've heard it even surpassed San Diego one year for, first or second Comic-Con. But to be quite honest with you, they're actually, I wouldn't say that there's that much difference necessarily in terms of like the stardom, the superstars, the celebrities that show up. It's just smaller. New York is just larger, and it's cool because it's in New York. So in many ways, there's a happy medium that you can get. And in fact, I'm not the first one to say this. Obviously, I'm not the most experienced at going to cons, but lots of creators, writers, artists, they'll say that some of their most enjoyable cons are their smaller venues because they're, there's less crowds, they can get around more time to interact one-on-one with fans, a less feeling of being pressured and having to go to certain panels. But again, there's something about the hype of New York. There's that pilgrimage factor of New York. I mean, when I went to New York October to meet you to go, there was a pilgrimage factor. I was on a mission. It was like a journey, literally. I mean, there's something epic about it, and one of the things that I openly wonder is there's a certain exclusivity factor. I feel special by saying I attended New York, even if I attended Calgary, honestly. Because a lot of people don't. Some people don't like crowds. Some people aren't into that. But there's an exclusivity factor to it, and there's a hype factor to it that if you're into pop culture, this is what you want to do, man. You want to plan, you want to go. And when that exclusivity factor is gone, and the hype, can the hype still be there without the exclusivity? And that's what this big test is with DC Fandom and with the San Diego at home this year, is now that the exclusivity is gone, without the attendance and without the overhead and people attending, can it be just as exciting? That's what's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think the thing that New York gets, just like something like San Diego, is typically the panels are typically pretty big, pretty revealing. They're pivotal moments in the publishing line for the year. It's unfortunate that, your first New York Comic-Con, DC had a pretty lackluster appearance. But, we even went to that Marvel panel where they started unveiling more and more about the Dawn of X, even into like the next phase of it. Wasn't my first New York Comic-Con? Might have been my second. I mean, we had a Doomsday Clock panel where they started revealing stuff. That's when we found out at the time Rorschach was going to be in it. We got an ash can of the first 4 pages. I mean, stuff like that, man. Like, New York is, a major league con. And so aside from the fact that it's just big and grand and there's a lot to see, and you'll likely be able to meet, if you can schedule yourself out properly, creators that you wouldn't see anywhere else. You also just get these pretty monumental panels that are just huge for the current status of whatever publisher is hosting them. You know what I mean? You get to see some pretty big stuff, and Hollywood even shows up to New York to a lesser degree as San Diego. But, I think it was the year before last, before we realized how bad this Hellboy movie was going to be. They had an exclusive panel with a trailer that they only showed at that panel. Dark Horse gave out these really nice quality Hellboy kind of prints more than they were posters. It's nuts. It's so nuts.
Well, even in New York, there, just a quick note that we saw, Margot Robbie was there, and the Harley Quinn promotion, which, even though just like Hellboy, the movie wasn't as well received as the DC was hoping, but it's another example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know what I mean? The year before that, I saw Zachary Levi, same situation. You know what I mean? So there's certainly a presence and a grandeur, aside from the fact that admittedly I have a bias because I absolutely love New York City, but it's a great con, man. That convention is my Christmas every year. Thanks, COVID. Appreciate you taking that out for me. But it's huge, man. And we have a couple of folks kind of giving some of their con experiences in the chat as well. Aaron Vio says, super stoked. Never actually had an experience of going to a con in person, excluding a very small one in East Haven. Best thing of 2020. Yeah, so it looks like some things are looking up for you if you want to attend in some capacity. Like ComicBoom has been talking about the at-home San Diego Comic-Con. DC Fandom looks like it's gearing up to be something really big. So you got a lot out there for you.
Yeah, this is a copy of the web page of that. It's San Diego Comic-Con 2020. What to know about San Diego at home? Just type that in. Go to the site. It's got all the links to all the panels to all, and it's really, really easy to navigate. Check it out.
Absolutely. We also have Ed Brewer in the chat saying, "Yo, what's up, man?"
Eddie.
The one and only Samoki dude saying, "How's it going, boys? I'm good, brother. Just chatting comics with my Canadian pal."
It's good, Okie. Good seeing you, bud.
Wants to know our thoughts on Rorschach series. We're going to keep this short because it's pretty unrelated to the topic. I'm not really interested. I am very cautious when anybody touches Rorschach. Tom King, a little bit more cautious. Tom King is certainly not a bad writer. He's great when he has his own sandbox and he can build whatever type of architecture he wants in said sand. But when there's an architecture around a character, I do not trust him to compromise it to build whatever he wants. I don't know, Boom. How do you feel about it?
Well, to cut to the chase, I really hope I'm wrong, but it doesn't sit well with me. I have a bad, to quote Han Solo, I have a bad feeling about this. I have a bad feeling about it, and I don't even mind King on a lot of his 12-issue series and stuff, but Rorschach is a character, man. That's a you really got to get that you got to get that character right, and but hey, well, we'll see. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying I won't try it. I'm a little bit skeptical at trusting Tom King with that first issue money because first issue money is huge. So we'll see. You know what I mean? We got Joe's Geek Show saying first one for him was 2014 at Comicpalooza in Houston. First meeting Greg Capullo, got his new 52 Batman #1 signed. Also same con where a guy took his Batman to get signed by Stan Lee and Stan wrote over Greg's. Damn, that's rough.
Probably Stan. That was probably when Stan was slowly experiencing dementia, or they set his elbow on. He was like 94 or 93 years old, and they were helping him sign.
I'm also just confused why the hell you would want Stan Lee to sign a Batman book. Like, I just feel like for the $100 or so that you pay, to get a Stan Lee signature, I can't help but think you'd get something that Stan Lee created and or worked on. So to that person, I say, fuck you, it's your own fault. So, but but Joe does say that Greg re-signed it, but in the wrong open, so there was streaks, and signed again with the right marker. The guy's cover was destroyed forever. That's what he gets for being an idiot and bringing Stan Lee a Batman book.
But that's a good story. Keep that comic book. That's still a great story. I mean, you better to have a comic with a story behind it than just a scribble.
Fair enough. We got Tevia Smoka saying hello. Thoughts of X of Swords, whatever the hell it's called, having 24 parts. Again, brother, this isn't related to the topic, but, we will address it very briefly. Yeah, the 24 parts immediately turned me off. I, frankly, was ready to read this book. I thought it was going to be its own event series, maybe 6 to 10 issues. And then when they're like, 24 parts, I'm like, yeah, you can go fuck yourself. I'll probably be dropping more X books now. So that's just my thoughts. I'm not a fan of making events crazy crossovers like they did in the 90s. Like, we got great books out of No Man's Land out of it, but it becomes impossible to trim the fat. And it's just unnecessarily confusing. I'd rather just have an eponymous event title called X of Swords that makes it easy to manage, have your tie-ins, whatever the hell you want to do. But yeah, the whole 24 parts thing, for somebody who doesn't mind decompression, 24 parts can go fuck themselves in every which way. So I don't know. What are you thinking, Rocky?
Well, same thing. Same thing. I like the concept of X of Swords, and to be honest, since I get review copies from Marvel, I have an opportunity to read it. And here's the kicker, guys. Some of this stuff I can read for free, and I don't read it. And I can read it for free, and I don't read it because I'm not going to read 24 parts. I just don't. I don't. Like I said, I'll read the main series. If I'm lost reading the main series, then that's a criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a very grand point, and it becomes very easy to get lost in something like comic books with such an awkward publishing schedule. So, we have Aaron VO saying, bro, Joe, that's some serious shade. Very much so. Somoki dude, he first went to a con maybe in 2016. It was a local con where he met lesser known creators. Another one he went to the next year, he saw Kevin Conroy, Spike from Buffy, and so on. That's awesome. Kevin Conroy has gone to, I would say, almost every convention I've ever been to, and I've refrained from meeting him, and I feel like I'm going to regret it. So hopefully the next time I see him at a con, I will have enough money to go up to him and to get him to record the I want you to remember the one man who beats you dialogue from Dark Knight Returns. I've always wanted to hear Kevin Conroy read that. So that's the thing. Fun fact, he's on Cameo, and he was at $75 for a Cameo thing, and I was going to have him record an intro for the channel, but your boy's broke, and it went up to $100, and I'm like, that's not happening right now. So, but Kevin Conroy, yeah, that's fucking awesome.
It's awesome. I got to show this. I did get my picture taken with Stan Lee. So I always dressed up. I often dressed up as Indiana Jones, and so before I went to Stan Lee, I bought a Spider-Man T-shirt and I mixed it in with my cosplay. So it was good. He just sat there. He said hi to me, and 4 seconds later, the experience was finished. I still have the price tag. All for $110 Canadian.
Dude,
for one picture with Stan Lee.
That's what kills me, man. The whole like exploitation of Stan Lee, and I get he's a popular guy, but one, like, he's old, and I've heard so many stories about just them having to like bring blankets for the poor man, and just, I don't know, they put him through a lot of shit, and I didn't have the heart to contribute to that. I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
I couldn't do that. And I know he's making money and all, but it's just like, first of all, comic book fans, not speaking for everyone, but like a lot of comic book fans are totally antisocial and like just do not have great etiquette, especially at conventions. And it's just like this 80-something-year-old guy dealing with antisocial comic book fans and then getting like lugged around everywhere. I used to feel so bad about it. I had the opportunity, I think my first year at New York Comic-Con, I was just like, I can't do that, man. You know what I mean? I'm also that weird guy that like, I could have an opportunity, say like, Frank, it actually happened. Funny story, con story. I went to, I think it was one of the year that I had a press passes for DC. I was right up in line. It was a Batman panel. Frank Miller was there, and I was 2 inches away from Frank Miller, and I was like, had to juggle like my conscience. I was like, but like it's Frank Miller and he's right there. And then the other part of me is like, but like you could tell he just wants to go and I don't want to be that guy. What do I do? And I ended up being courteous, and I slightly regret it. But yeah, that's the type of comic book fan I am. I feel so bad because people bombard these guys for signatures and photos and whatnot. I was like, but you can tell he just wants to go. I don't know. Do you think I made a mistake? Should I have done it? Should I have just, steamrolled this old man for a signature?
No, well, I don't know. I still think you got, I still think you benefit from being kind and not being crazy.
Yeah, hopefully, listen, man, I'm an atheist, but if the whole karma thing wants to work itself out for me because of that, I wouldn't complain. Okay. We also have Tevye Smoka saying his first con was MegaCon, which was tons of fun. He got to meet Greg Weisman. That sounds cool. That sounds really cool. MegaCon's a big one.
Yeah. I got a question. Oh, sorry.
So what were you going to say, my brother?
I was just kind of curious because what you think of Comic-Cons. Do you think a Comic-Con is adversely affected if the big two don't show? Because even at San Diego this year, DC has their fandom, but San Diego Comic-Con, even though it's at home, DC and Marvel don't have a huge presence at San Diego Comic-Con. And you got to wonder if DC and Marvel end up doing their own cons, it's going to take away from San Diego, New York, if the emphasis is going to be on their separate cons. Because let me tell you something, Kevin Feige, that's what he's looking at. If DC fandom is a huge success, I wonder if it might be adverse. It might be a bad thing in the long run for other Comic-Cons and expos. Like, at least I hope. I don't know.
Well, there are a couple things that need to kind of be mentioned in order to really qualify this. One is the fact that the overhead is so much smaller, Two, you lose the chance for cross exposure. Like a big part about this huge conglomerate Comic-Con with all these different publishers and manufacturers and whatever designers is that you get a little bit of cross contamination. So whether or not somebody was going to walk up to your booth and see your things, it's just there. And 9 times out of 10, somebody spent $50, $60 to be there for the day. They want to see everything. So you're getting a little bit there. Now you get into the semantics as to whether or not DC and Marvel end up having cons down the line that are in person or online. Because obviously, I think that DC Fandom is going to be very successful. One, because it's free, and two, because the barrier to entry is absolutely minimal. Like if you have a moderately decent internet connection and can stream, you're fine. If they try to charge for DC Fandom, I guarantee you that the audience of people that would go to see it would be cut into like a fifth. You'd get, you know what I mean? So I think that, especially with how big Comic-Cons are getting in the pop culture space, I don't think we'll ever be in a situation, at least once the world kind of gets back on its feet, where we won't have like those massive conglomerate Comic-Cons, because there's just so much benefit to it for everybody. You know what I mean? And again, like just the cultural phenomenon is there. There are people that don't even read comics going to those conventions. There are people that know nothing about that stuff that go.
But I'm thinking, like, for example, like DC or Marvel, if they really were smart about it, they could say, look, if you want a one-day exclusive look at a trailer, and like it's going to be released, but the only way you can see it is if you pay $5. But with your $5, we're also going to throw in 2 trades of, like, say, Superman or stuff like that. And I bet you, though, I mean, I'd pay $5 just to see that on an online thing. And you never know. That might be a gateway to broaden the comic book audience.
As in, like,
that are normally going to a pop culture event, because a lot more people go to Comic-Cons than buy comic books. And
yeah.
So I don't know. I think there's so many opportunities here that are just potentially being explored, and that's just one example.
I mean, are you talking as in digital trades?
Yeah, digital.
Okay, so here's the thing, and this is why I don't think it works. One, because those trailers, if you give people online access, they'll go up and be yeah, a la carte, Ed Brewer says here. They'll go up and they will be posted in ridiculously high quality sooner and faster than any other leaked footage that has ever come out of a Comic-Con.
Yeah, but you're missing my point, though, because the purchase of the $5 to see it in advance will be made prior to it. I mean, it's something they could try.
Yeah, but I feel like most people are wise enough to the fact that, if you're paying $5 for the 2 trades and a trailer, the trailer, I feel like it's pretty intuitive that the trailer is going to leak quick. And then again, like a digital trade, at that point, most of the people, I guarantee you, most people at a Comic-Con have at some point in their lives pirated trades. So I feel I just feel like the incentive isn't super high. From my perspective, like, yeah, would I go to do it? Yes. But there's also like a host of people out there that don't care about the industry, don't mind pirating and things of that nature. I mean, I'll pirate trailers. I don't mind pirating a trailer, seeing a leaked trailer, because whatever. But again, I don't know. They'd have to come up with some pretty big incentives. But even then, I just feel like there's way more of a benefit to having that cross contamination between fans of each of these different kind of subcultures within the comic book fan / geek population. You know what I mean?
I do. I would just add to that, though, that I think that we live in this day and age, and I think, number one, they should try it. And the reason why, you could be right, it could be an abject failure. But here's the thing. I mean, you even alluded to it earlier when we started this broadcast. There are people that randomly watch your show who give you $20 or $5, and they give you donations. They do that to random YouTubers out of the goodness of their heart, because they're thankful and they're grateful. I think that that's something that I would certainly contribute for charity alone to an online Comic-Con, especially if I got something, if creators dedicated or donated some artistic work, or I got something online, or even some Comic-Con exclusive, see it here first. I think it has a cool factor to it that I think would appeal to a lot of geeks like us.
Hear me out. I think that a majority of donations online and whatnot, they're kind of fulfilling that contributing to a small business kind of feel. That is definitely a big part of it. Because you see, a lot of situations now where people online put up these Patreons and are able to make a decent chunk of change, and people pay, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus dollars a month for their YouTube or their Twitch content. When Netflix's subscription price went up to $12, everybody bitched and moaned. And yet when it comes to contributing to somebody's Patreon, upwards of that for, a very, very, very small percentage of that amount of content, and likely to a lower quality, it says something about like the nature of where people like to spend their money and how. I think that's a big part of it. Like, you know what I mean? If somebody were to contribute to my tiny YouTube channel, one, I think it is their what sort of it's a level of generosity from one human to another in a very direct way. I'm sure part of it is definitely because there's an enjoyment of the content, but I feel like that is a big part of it, versus with a big company like DC Comics, you're like, okay, I'm giving my money to DC, which is Warner Brothers, which is AT&T. Who gives a shit about Warner Brothers? I don't know anybody that works I know freelancers, but you know what I'm saying. So I feel like that's kind of the big driving force, behind somebody donating money to a content creator versus doing something like that. Whereas, like, I feel like you and I understand that, and we might have that mentality when we're contributing to DC. I feel like a majority of fans don't.
Right. I think one of the things where, without just to add to it, is I think the fear that San Diego has and New York has and all comic conventions have, and of course, except for Florida, which actually they're still having their people physically attend in Florida, which is insane. But
oh my God.
I think it's interesting that part of the appeal of Comic-Cons is the premiere of special events, like the premieres of movies and movie trailers and what have you. And if the movies move away from that, and if the cons are less popular, then it's going to move away from being a premier exclusive status to being nothing but another convention. And if all it becomes is nothing but a comic-related geek convention, then even on an online presence, it's going to suffer. So I think it's imperative that they try something. And I think that's what they're doing with DC Fandom. I'm not exactly sure. I've seen it exactly what they have planned. I've read it, and even San Diego, they've got a lot of panels. That's a good start. I think, though, that they have to work on something to create the hype. How do you create online hype? I mean, they're experts at creating hype for people to go to San Diego. How do you create hype? Remember, they just need people to go to their computers. They don't need to leave the house. You can literally be naked. You can just, you don't even have to shower. You can get up in the morning and go to your computer, and you're going to be at San Diego at whatever panel you want. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to make this feel kind of crazy, geek-like special. And there's even cosplay contests. I can dress up, and I can take a picture of myself on my iMac here, and I can send it in. I can dress up like Indiana Jones, Jonah Hex, Batman, and send it, get Joe Geek Show there, have him dress up like Batman, and you're allowed so much length of a video. You can send it in and even be in the contest for San Diego. They're really trying to go all out here, and I got to give them credit. And because I want this to feel, I hope this feels like a little bit extra than maybe just us watching another YouTube channel.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll definitely get more into what we think the virtual con will be providing into kind of the next part of this conversation. But yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how this goes, because I know there have been a couple attempts on a fairly small scale up until now, but I think that San Diego 2020 and DC Fandom are definitely going to redefine what a virtual comic book convention is going to look like. But I did want to acknowledge Tim Board here, saying that he's never been to a Comic-Con. He dreams of attending one day. He'll probably just stand at the entrance with his mouth open, then come to his senses, pull up his overalls, and expect to have the time of his life. Well, I'm surprised you haven't. I know you're out in Japan, and I vaguely remember you saying you're not super close to Tokyo, but I know that there are Tokyo Comic-Cons and things of that nature. So hopefully one day you get to attend one. If not, come down to one of the United States. You know what I mean? One of these days we'll have the comic book online Justice League coming to New York Comic-Con. Join me, Boom, and hopefully one day Joe. So you know what I mean? We always link something like that together. But we have Tehillim29 saying that if he were to ever go to a Comic-Con, he wouldn't want to go by himself. I'd want to go with someone else that knows me. Yeah, no doubt. That's like one of the best parts about going to a Comic-Con, like the companionship, going with friends. You know, I go every year to New York with 2 to 3 friends. You know, I was fortunate enough this past year to have Boom come with me. And, you know, half the fun was going out at night and hanging out and having a couple drinks and just, you know, talking geeky shit, talking other shit, you know, eating good food. Like that camaraderie is a big part of the comic book convention. And you know what I mean? Like when you split up and then you all come back together and everybody has a bunch of new shit, like artwork, toys, things like that, man. That's always a big part of the convention. I don't know. Like, I know obviously you've spoken a lot of high praise about the experience with our group at New York, Boom, but like how big of a part does the kind of companionship, you know, at a Comic-Con take up in your overall enjoyment of going to a convention?
Oh, it's fun. It can heighten the experience tremendously. I got fantastic memories of old friends back in the day. 2012 in particular on Calgary Comic-Con was arguably, well, next to New York, was an incredible time. I went with a buddy. He dressed up like RoboCop. I was Indiana Jones. We were interrupted, and we couldn't walk 20 feet with people. At that time, there was a feeling that the Comic-Con had just exploded, at least in Calgary, and it had become new. And that year was the year that the entire cast of the Star Trek Next Generation was there. The entire cast. It was the only time they've ever been at one Comic-Con, and that was in Calgary, 2012. And it was super packed. We were constantly stopped for whatever reason. People wanted to take our pictures, and my buddy came in second in the contest for best costume. And going out at night, incredible. We went to a couple years later. I went to the after party at Calgary Comic-Con at Cowboys nightclub. Walking in, the entire nightclub was the Avengers theme. The women were dressed up like super. I was dressed up like I dressed up. I was a cross between Jonah Hex and Iron Man. I got to admit, I looked awesome. I had cowboy boots and I had the big Iron Man chest with the Jonah Hex cowboy hat on, and I danced all night. I just had a fantastic time. It was so good. And as a quick aside, not to cause controversy, but you know, about all the Me Too movement and all the, you know, the comic book industry sort of under, you know, people being groomers and being sexual predators. And I got to tell you that, yeah, like, look, you can have a lot of fun at an after party at a Comic-Con. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's a lot of fun. And, but hey, you know, if you don't want to bark with the dogs, get off the porch.
Yeah. I mean, the BarCon stuff is interesting, man, and especially as I get closer and closer to you know, getting myself into the industry. You know, I find myself more and more looking for the bars and the places that all of the industry professional goes after the con, you know, to kind of network and whatnot. So I don't know. There's definitely a part of it, though, admittedly, like being a male, I don't feel threatened, you know, by the potential of something happening to me in the same way a woman might. So there are totally different contexts for different types of people. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, things will be different, but that's definitely a huge part of it. You know what I mean? Like I said, simply like when we would split up and come back together, you know what I mean? And, you know, you have one of your millions of new shirts or something, or you just picked up a cool, you know, foil variant from the graffiti booth, and I come back and I have art and, you know, stuff like that. That's always so much fun, just kind of linking back up. And it's an experience. It's definitely worth going with people. Go with guys you trust. Go with guys and or gals that you know will be a good time, man, because once the world gets back up on its feet, man, the first thing I will be looking forward to is going back to New York Comic-Con with my group of guys and just having a fucking blast, you know? So that's a huge part of it. Ed Brewer says creators will have to promote themselves, draw well, write well, and be good to fans on Twitter. The fans will come. Yeah, I feel like that's always a big component. You know, it'll be interesting to see if the idea of an artist alley online gets adapted a little bit more or streamlined a little bit more. In which case, I think obviously your statement here will become even more pertinent. But per usual, I think that this is always important. I think that this is huge, regardless as to whether or not we have virtual cons. I don't know, Boom. How do you feel about that?
Well, as far as virtual cons and creators promoting themselves, yeah, they got to. This is a huge opportunity for them, and you know, I'm far more likely to listen to a panel now with it being online than I ever would if I was at a con. I mean, I miss 95%, 99% of the panels I miss at cons. I mean, because it's impossible to walk around. You got how many tens and square, hundreds of, it feels like 100 square miles of surface area that you got to traverse and walk. This is a huge opportunity to go to these panels online, a huge opportunity, because we're going to have a front row seat to every single panel, all a click away on YouTube, with San Diego, the largest comic convention in the world. And they've put just as much effort into their panels as they would normally, but they have the advantage of not having to deal with the overhead and the infrastructure and the financial overhead of putting it all together. There's a huge opportunity here, and I can't emphasize this enough. I'm going to support this because regardless if the pandemic ends, I see this continuing even afterwards, because there's no reason if you can save, I mean, what $10 million of overhead? I'm making that number up, but I mean, if you could put on 30, 40 panels yourself, who's to say you and I couldn't organize our own, call it a Dark Knight ComicBoom ComicCon and put our own panels together and just have some fun and have our own 20 panels of different guys and getting together. You know what I mean? It's and get a bunch of creators together and create our own online panels, but with Zoom and all these other online WebEx and all these things that you have. This is the tip of the iceberg, I think.
Yeah, I definitely see it expanding into something. And I think that post-pandemic, we'll definitely be in a world where virtual cons become, a mainstay to some capacity. Will they be as large as something like a DC Fandom or something like San Diego at home? I don't think so. I think that they'll become kind of minor presences. I think you'll be more often than not, they'll feature attendees that aren't maybe as popular unless there's some kind of networking going on where whoever throws it might have other resources. But in a post-pandemic world where we're getting back to having normal Comic-Cons, I don't think they're going to be as big, because to me, I don't know, maybe the hype just got to me, but DC Fandom looks huge. I mean, like, you're literally getting San Diego Comic-Con level reveals both in the movie side and the comic book side, all in one place, and it's going to be super concentrated. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I don't know, Boom, you might be on the other end. Do you think that the infrastructure of virtual cons will be so well built by the time we get our normal cons back that they'll become a much bigger presence? Like, will they be able to compete, do you think, with actual in-person Comic-Cons?
I think in-person Comic-Cons will still probably make more money, because I'm still, because building on our previous discussion, I don't know how they're going to make money. I mean, this is free. I mean, everybody can go to DC Fandom for free, and same with San Diego at home. So I don't know how they're making any money on it other than maybe some advertising or some other method. Obviously, I do think that you would make more money doing it free. But I guess my question is, and this is a question for you, is do you think it's going to be a negative effect? Because if people get spoiled, because look, if we have a front row seat at all the panels staying at home here, do I really want to spend the thousands of dollars to fly to New York City, even though it's New York, or even though it's San Diego? Do I really want to wait 3 hours in a lineup for something that I can see free online? I don't know. I mean, it might, it's tough to say. You got to wonder if maybe there's going to be an adverse effect.
Well, in your case, of course you do, because I'm one fun motherfucker. So there's a part of it.
I'm just kidding.
But I do think that the general populace will kind of understand if these big virtual con presences go away once the world starts getting back to normal, because obviously this is a pretty unexpected circumstance to be in. Therefore, it calls for an unexpected response. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I still think that the fans will be I think honestly, coming out of this, like once things get back to normal, people will probably be, chewing at the ends of the rope here, looking forward to going to a Comic-Con. I know I will. Like the first actual New York Comic-Con that we get coming out of this, like you better bet I'm gonna cancel everything that's remotely around it. You know what I mean? And get my ass there. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a good chance that the next New York Comic-Con that happens, there's a good chance I go all 4 days, because I'm just that starving for Comic-Con.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. And I think it does go to show generally amongst the American populace in particular at how much they're chomping at the heels to get back to normal life. And especially with something like Comic-Con, with a body of super passionate people that really, really care about this stuff, I think that people are gonna be, again, running out the door to go to Comic-Cons as soon as it becomes remotely safe.
Here's the question I have, because I'm really curious, because I'm looking at I'm looking at the DC Fandom webpage. Fandom, they're gonna have DC Uverse, DC Kidsverse, DC Insiderverse, DC Funverse, DC's Hall of Heroes, and a DC Watchverse. And all this is all linked, and it looks so cool. And you can go online, and I'm just thinking, how cool would that be if this is a success, to get up in August, whatever, some August Saturday morning, click on put DC Fandom on the big screen. I get my daughter out, we click on one of them, and we enjoy some DC Kidsverse, and hopefully they're online. Everything will work out. There'll be no computer glitches on their end. This has potential to be kind of exciting because it's new. It's not like it's going to be every week. This could be an annual online event. I mean, like, I can't underscore enough that if they nail the landing on this, I think this could be a really good time. And let me tell you something, if they nail a landing on this, I'll happily pay $10, $20 next year for the same experience if I get to enjoy it with my daughter or my family. I mean, I say again, like I'm someone that'll give $10 to somebody in need, or 20. I mean, and lots of people do that, like you said, with the Patreon and the YouTube contributions. I'm just saying, like, you never know. It might be, it's going to be interesting to see, because right now this is an experiment.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that could certainly happen, but a big credit to why I think DC Fandom looks so big. A, like you said, one, because it's new. B, because all of the major Comic-Cons of this coming, of this really the next 12 months are shot, which is every major Comic-Con: New York, LA, San Diego, WonderCon, ECC, you know what I'm saying? Everything.
Yeah.
So I think they're really kind of condensing this into one jam-packed thing. And I think that's a big part of why it's so appealing, because it's like, wow, we're going to be getting big stuff for the DC publishing line. We're going to be getting news on movies we know are coming, movies we know a lot about, movies we know nothing about. I mean, I guarantee you we're getting our first Batman trailer. I guarantee you we're getting our first Batman trailer. And I'm going to be watching that shit with a fucking stiffy under the table. And huh?
Too much information.
This is for the real subscribers. So you know what I mean? It's exciting, and I'm really excited. But again, they can really condense all of this DC Comics content into this one show, because there's literally nowhere else to distribute it right now. And this is how you get the most eyes on it and create the biggest buzz. So, apropos of your statement of our Comic-Con, Aaron Vio says he'd go to DarkBoomicon.
Hey, that's a good name. That's a good name. We got to patent that name. We got to copyright that name right away.
Yeah, we got it. We got to get Aaron Vio a little bit of that royalty money, that sweet royalty money.
We should have. That's an idea for a future stream or something, an event. DarkBoomicon.
DarkBoomicon. That'll be interesting. That's something. We'll have to remember this. Ed Brewer says hotels and other area businesses will take a big hit. Jobs will be lost. That is a big part of it. It's gonna, these huge Comic-Cons, New York, LA, San Diego, the local economy is just, they see a huge spike in business during these events, and I'm sure that they tend to lend towards a pretty decent percentage of their yearly sales and whatnot. So that is a very, very good point.
I want to add a point to that. That I did some Google. I did a little bit of research on Disney's experience with the pandemic and just their Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom, and the reality is that shots of big crowds right now are kind of scary for a lot of people. The idea of going to any place with a big crowd, and if you even look at Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom that Disney opened up, I mean, they're virtual ghost towns because no one's really going. Disney's even offered 60% off of hotel accommodations to get people to go to Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom.
Holy shit.
They've offered 60% off hotel accommodations for the actors and for the workers to go there and work. They've also found something interesting. What they've noticed is that people are willing to drive to Disney. They're willing to drive if the drive isn't too far to the Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom, but they're not willing to fly. So that's also something to bear in mind, that some people are willing to put up with the crowds, but they're not willing to get on an airplane. And of course, there's something about an airplane there. The likelihood of getting a coronavirus seems anecdotally to be a little bit more dangerous than driving, I guess. I don't know the stats on that, but I hear sort of people, there's like a lot of trepidation on that. Also, a quick point related, July 4th was a very busy travel day despite the pandemic. Now, of course, I know it is July 4th. It's Independence Day in the United States. But it is worth noting that people will travel for a perceived big event. And finally, August 4th, Disney releases their quarterly report. So to keep that in mind, the news cycle on August 4th, just to see how disastrous this quarterly cycle has been for Disney.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I mean, I think too, our perspectives of what large numbers are going to be skewed, right? Because we're so used to being limited to, 10-person gatherings. So, you see thousands and immediately, some might get scared. Some might not even, bat an eye. But I do certainly think that we will kind of have to take a step back and put everything into perspective. And on that, it makes me curious for both you, Boom, and everybody in the chat. With the way things are going, what would the soonest be that you would be willing to go to a big Comic-Con? And what would need to happen in order for you to be comfortable going to a big Comic-Con? I know back when this pandemic first hit, that was an active discussion we had about New York. Like, what happens if this? What happens if that? So I'm curious that at this stage, we're almost freaking, what are we, 4 months, almost 5 months into quarantine? What has to happen in order for you guys to feel comfortable going to a big Comic-Con? Starting obviously with you, Boom. What would that be? Well,
I mean this with great respect to my American friends, but I feel much more safer in Canada right now. I just feel that my country we're dealing with the coronavirus more successfully than you. Believe me, we're not perfect. We have some hot spots. In fact, Alberta, where I live, is actually one of the hot spots right now in Canada. We just had 100 people in one day here, which is our worst yet. But we're still, us in Quebec, Alberta and Quebec, we're not doing that great. But still, it's manageable. I would be much more likely to go to a Comic-Con here in Canada, anywhere in Canada except for Quebec, than I would in the United States. I don't feel comfortable traveling, air travel. My wife wouldn't let me go anyway, to be very blunt, and I would respect that and honor that. But even if I was single though, and I didn't have a family, I'm not quite comfortable going to the U.S. at this time. I just want to maybe wait till after your election. Hopefully things will die down and the pandemic will die down a bit. I just feel a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I honestly don't blame you. And the fact that you're seeing numbers in Florida and the spike that the United States had just seen, the fact that it is double the amount of that first peak is just absolutely astounding. So I don't freaking blame you. And to be quite frank, you know what I mean? There's a chance that, if we don't see a New York Comic-Con in a while, or if things don't get too great, who knows? Maybe I go to the Calgary Comic-Con. Like, that's not a thing that I'm opposed to doing. So we will see.
You'd enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Plus, I've never been to Canada, so that'd be kind of fun.
Oh,
That'd be
wow.
something. I've been across the world. I've been to Europe. I've been, to parts of Asia. Never been to Canada though. So
Wow.
let's we'll keep that as.
We're so friendly up here.
I know that's true. That is very true. I remember that first night we were in the B&B, we were actually cracking on you because you were saying sorry all the time for nothing. So yeah, some of the stereotypes, man, ever present. Tim Board said the conversation did just go under the table. I assume that's with my comment on the Batman trailer. I've never claimed this to be a kid-friendly channel. Never once in my life. Tevya Smoka says, "Goddamn virus." You're goddamn right, Tevya. That thing really, really, stirred things up for a lot of people. Tim Board also says he'll go to a big crowd or even travel after there's a vaccine available for everybody. America, it will be a long time before he goes home again. Sad but honest answer. It is unfortunate. It is very unfortunate. Again, with everything that we do know and with everything that we openly acknowledge we don't know about this virus, the fact that we months into this quarantine have seen such an exponential rise in cases is absolutely freaking astounding. So I drop every ounce of my pride at being an American and saying, I don't blame you. And I'm sorry, brother. I'm so sorry.
We're very lucky to live in times where that we have the technology that we do, that we can still in some capacity enjoy pop culture online like this. We are so lucky right now, and it's a great time, not to get all self-help, but it's a really good time to be grateful for the technology and that we have in society, that we can still enjoy and talk comic books like we are doing right now. And it is a consolation. It is a little bit of a consolation to know that we're getting a Comic-Con in some capacity, and I can still get up on a Saturday morning and literally spend all day in front of my computer and just dress up and pretend I'm at a Comic-Con.
Yeah, it is definitely nice to be able to kind of have these types of interactions. And again, like when they announced like everything going on at something like DC Fandom, I just got straight excited. And it's cool to see that whether or not it's for the best intentions, that these companies are finding a way to deliver that content to us in some way, shape, or form, given the circumstances. Aaron Vio says he doesn't think it's a matter of time as much as two factors. First, the development of a vaccine, which I agree. I agree with you on that. And second, that Texas and Florida stop being so fucking stupid. Also a big component. There's a reason I think people joke more about folks from the South than they do about anywhere else in the United States. With all due respect to my Southern viewership, I still love you. Wear a fucking mask, please. Aaron Vio and Tevya Smoka echo some similar sentiments that America does suck. And on that, we're getting more back into the Comic-Cons, folks. So as we're approaching into the final leg of this conversation, the future of Comic-Cons, I do want to recommend you guys, if you would like to, ComicBoom actually has a playlist of parts of our adventure of New York Comic-Con last year. So if you're feeling con hungry, you want to watch some good times, kind of share in some fun moments we had last year, make sure you guys go check that out, because those are a great little montage. I found myself like 2 weeks ago just up late watching the shit out of those, and I'm like, God damn, do I miss Comic-Con? So if you want to feel that too, make sure you guys go check that out. Link to his channel is in the description. But on that, as we close out this conversation, let's get into a little bit more what we think the future of Comic-Con is going to be like. I know we've talked about the potential presence of virtual Comic-Cons coming out, but where do physical comic book conventions go from here? Because obviously it's very up in the air, right, as to when the world even starts to resemble something that looks normal again. Some folks are saying in the next 7-8 months. Some people are saying 2-3 years from now. Others 4 or 5. So what do you think happens in your mind? Do we start seeing more physical conventions before the vaccine? Do you think the vaccine is kind of the pivot point at which we'll start seeing, all of these different organizers start to discuss reopening conventions? I'd also feel like if it does take a couple of years, we're probably going to be in a situation where a lot of these kind of smaller and medium size, even some of the larger organizers are probably going to go out of business. So, it's all up in the air, but Boom, what are you thinking? What is everybody in the chat thinking?
Well, just to kind of reiterate what I've already alluded to and stated explicitly, it of course it comes right down to the status of the pandemic. There's no question about it. Now, even before the pandemic, I've noticed, at least in Southern Alberta, that there's been a growth in really cool, smaller venue, genuinely comic-centric conventions, which I frankly, in my heart of hearts, I actually enjoy more. Like, I mean, it's not the same as a Calgary Comic-Con or New York, don't get me wrong, but it's hardcore comic book related. I spend all day looking just at comics and talking with guys who've collected as long as I have or more, or we're all there to collect something and look for something. And it's great looking in the $1, $2, $3 bins. They're $3 bins in Canada, so but well, they're $2 bins mostly. But in any event, it's that I really, really like, and those are becoming more and more popular. And only the diehards go, and I really like those. But as far as the I think the convention, if the convention's not going to go away unless the pandemic doesn't go away. But I mean, I have a feeling that, can you imagine where, flash forward, if we have a cure, let's say 6 months from now, that first comic convention a year after that, I mean, there's going to be a massive, desire to have a comic convention. At least I think that. I mean, can you imagine if we have to wait 2 years for a comic convention? Oh my God. There's guys like you and I, we're going to be in withdrawal symptoms, and then we're just going to be like, try to keep us away.
like I said, man, I think you're going to see that more in the United States. With the rate it's going, there's a good chance I go to Calgary Comic-Con before I see a New York Comic-Con again, which will be an experience. I'll get to feast my eyes on my first $3 bin. What a magical moment that'll be. But it's going to be interesting, because I wonder what they're going to do, especially as I think whenever we get to the point where we're really starting to come out of it, what the sort of sanitary expectation is going to be, and what they're going to do about the capacity of their venues. Because obviously, you went to New York, you are literally like neck and neck with people, shoulder to shoulder. And that is clearly not a great environment for a con. And you would have to do some pretty significant downsizing in ticket sales, in terms of the quantity of ticket sales, in order to get that to a remotely safe level. I never expect, there to be a situation where a big Comic-Con will open up where we're social distancing at 6 feet. But do you think Comic-Cons will open up at full capacity once we have a vaccine? Or do you still think, they're going to be seeing some significantly lower, occupancy for these conventions?
I just don't know. I don't know. I think that I think that there's probably in the first, if they do it, depending how soon they do it, yeah, there's probably going to be a reduced number of people going. I should mention though, and I don't know if New York does this, but I know in the Calgary Comic-Con, they actually have halfway through the year, they got a mini Comic-Con around Christmas time, but it's not they don't call it Comic-Con. They call it just sort of like, I forget what they call it, but it's actually sort of a mini con where you can go, and a lot of the same venues are there. The vendors are there that are there normally at the Comic-Con, but it's smaller, but it's still sort of the same vendors. And it's kind of cool as well. And so there's mini cons. So I don't know, like I'm speculating that I'm thinking that why wouldn't, if you're San Diego and you have some trepidation, or in New York, why not try a miniature con? Or may not, you can, who says you got to go big right away? I mean, you want to maybe test the waters a little bit. It's because I think the test is going to be, what about the smaller conventions? What's the smaller business convention circuit looking like? Are the hotels renting out their hotel rooms for weddings, convention? Like, you got to read the market a little bit. So this is going to be a work in progress, because you can't just hop. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, if I'm a guy who's an investor, I'm not going to drop $1 million to invest something in a New York Comic Con in this type of market right now. There's no way. I mean, I need to see the signs that something is changing.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a couple things that really kind of turn that on its head. One of which is, where do you draw the line between something being financially worth it, you know what I mean, or not? Because there has to be a certain head count at which these conventions will turn a profit for the organizers. And I'd be curious to see what that is exactly. Because in big cities like New York, the overhead is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to book the Javits Center for a tiny convention. And even booking, you know, a fraction of the Javits Center right there on the Hudson in New York, that's some big money. And so I think that's what really prevents you from doing that in some of the big cities in the United States, is that, you know, renting space costs a lot of money, and you would have to have enough space to where people feel safe organizing in a relatively massive size or a massive group. But also, you would need to make sure it's cost effective, right? Because they're not in it to lose money. So there are so many different complex things that'll go into something like this. Because again, like cons like New York, like, I guarantee you they would probably rather just not put it on until they can get themselves to a certain capacity. Will they reduce it? Maybe. Even so, they would have to do some pretty serious reduction in order to get that, you know, to a point where people feel, I think, relatively safe. So, you know, we will see. And you know, it'll be interesting too, bringing up the talent, because I've seen a lot of comic book creators, especially talking about, you know, all of the sort of different procedures that they would need the comic convention organizers to go through in order for them to feel comfortable. Because pandemic or not, you know, there's a reason why comic book creators have coined the term con crud. You know, they feel sick at the end of the conventions as is. So do they even want to put themselves in a situation lowering their immune system after the world comes out of a pandemic? I think not. So, you know, where you have the bigger names, which are the ones that most people go to conventions for, that are in the position to not go to these conventions, it also begs the question as to what we'll see from the kind of lower tier, less popular comic book creators who kind of need to go to conventions to pay their bills, you know? So it's really interesting. Like, I don't know. Have you seen a lot of that on Twitter? Like, creators kind of engaging in dialogue about what they would need to see out of cons on a sanitary level before they go back?
I'm a big fan of Jimmy Palmiotti, and I follow him on Twitter, and he's a great. I just have a lot of respect for him and Amanda Connor, his wife, who's also a phenomenal artist and creator in her own right. And he makes a lot of comments and about Comic Cons and about his role and their role, and he's the type of guy that won't even charge for his signature, and he's always talking about his opinions on cons and everything else, and he's sort of alluded to some things. Like, he's definitely he wouldn't dream of going to the con. He's telling people to wear masks, and he's also very vocal about his politics, which frankly I respect. I don't want to, you know, that's another topic, but I got no problem with a creator telling me their politics. It's a free country, or at least a free world, at least last time I checked, most of it anyway. And no, look, why the hell should a creator risk their health and their life by going to, you know, they make their money. They don't make their money at cons. They go for the fans. But I mean, this is a different metric now. This is a very different metric. This is about life and death. And it is about life and death. That's not even an exaggeration. That's just a harsh truth. And which is another reason why, quite frankly, I want to support San Diego. I want to support San Diego at home. I want to support DC fandom, not just because I'm a DC fan, but because I think it's important, because I think that I want it to be successful. I want people to have some happiness in July, even if they're forced to stay at home and wear, you know, same thing in August with DC fandom.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And Davis Comics brings up an interesting kind of point to discuss. Is back in the day, he used to go to local Comic-Con shows where there were more dealers than customers. This might be the return, smaller local shows. it'll be interesting, but I think that in regards to getting like bigger names, it gets really hard to get, kind of current up and coming superstar creators at those smaller cons. You'll see kind of legends, that might have retired and folks of that nature. But, I don't think we're in a world where guys like, Donnie Cates or Scott Snyder or Jeff Johns are going to a smaller con. And for me, like, that's kind of like my favorite part about going to a convention, meeting the people that write and draw the things that I love and saying, hey, I love what you do. You know what I'm saying? That is a huge part of that for me. I don't know. It could just be my perspective though. Like, and I know Boom, you were just talking about how you quite like smaller cons, but in situations like that, do you feel like you're losing out on like the presence of the creators that you might not see otherwise?
Well, actually, if I'm going to a con and I love Artist Alley, I don't think I'm losing out. No, but to be clear, obviously, I'd like there to be a couple of big names at a con. Who doesn't? Good Lord, of course, we love that. But I got to tell you, I would suggest this to you, that one of the things about Calgary Comic Con versus New York is it's because it's that slightly smaller metric of a con. There are some additional opportunities you have that you wouldn't have in New York because the lineups just aren't as much. They aren't as long, and you have an opportunity to meet pretty much everyone you want, even the bigger name artists and creators that are there. And I love Artist Alley because there's so much talent there, and they're so willing to talk with you. And I found, for example, at New York Comic Con, I found that a lot of the bigger names are at New York, which is great. But one of the hidden gems of being at a smaller con is you do get to mingle, and you meet these young people that are passionate about. Well, I mean, you're a writer. It's enjoyable when I talk with you. You're very passionate about your writing and your dreams and your aspirations, and you talk comic books, and you have your own opinions, and there's something great. Like, I take like blank covers. I never brought any to New York because I was traveling, but I love going to Calgary, and I got a bunch of blank comic book covers, and I go to totally unknown artists. If I like an artist, and I give him a comic book to draw on the cover, a blank cover, they're just so flattered, and they will. I mean, I pay them. I insist on paying them something. A lot of them are so flattered they'll do it for free, and these are good artists. I mean, I can show you some stuff that I got from artists that I hope make it big one day. That should. It's fun. You get back what you put into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are pretty tremendous experiences, but I don't know. There's something about going to that big con, having that big con experience, getting to see, a lot of these international creators that you're really not going to see at smaller cons is really special. Like before, I mean, he's not even big now, but like Alvaro Martinez Bueno, who drew a grand majority of James Tynion and Justice League Dark Run, I was able to walk up to him and get a Robin sketch for absolutely nothing. And that's an experience that I just won't have at a small con. You know what I mean? So I really, really value those big conventions just because of the amount of pull they have, the amount of draw they have, the experience. So as much as I would go to a small convention, if they decided to give me a press pass, I love me some bigger, that just the energy of a big convention, the atmosphere, all of the, I don't want to say convenience because you definitely don't get to see and do everything you want to do, but you know what I mean? There's just so much in such a small space. So I don't know. Once we have a vaccine, I would risk, the ever famous con crud to go back to New York Comic Con and just have a freaking blast with some friends. You know what I'm saying? It's just such a good time. And I don't know, to me, those bigger cons, and it could just be because I'm young, you know what I mean? But to me, those bigger cons are just unparalleled. Like I said, New York Comic Con every year is my Christmas. So
I think I don't disagree with you. I would just add that to me, it's like watching a blockbuster movie like Endgame versus It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, you really can't compare the two. They're both great movies, but they're fundamentally different movies. And sometimes you just can't beat an epic superhero movie, right? You got to go big, right? And sometimes you just feel like something a little bit, you want the slow romantic comedy. I mean, it all depends on your mood. And that's why I said it it's all on your mindset that you prepare for before you go is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed smaller shows, but I feel like there's definitely a bar that a show has to cross in order for me to like really, really feel like it's money well spent. Like Terrificon, like I had mentioned, the first time I went, I really wasn't in love with it. It was just a couple hours of enjoyment, and then I was just like, okay, I'm ready to go. When I go to a Comic-Con, I want to at least get a day out of it. And it was like the year following when they just really stepped it up, got bigger, is when, I really felt like it was appealing to the things that I want out of a Comic-Con. So it also depends, I guess, on your definition of small. But to me, especially, again, from my perspective as an up and coming, or I should say, as an aspiring comic book creator, I like having the opportunity to get to be able to converse and have discussions with people that I admire, pick their brains, because as much as, it's cool to see like these little guys before they ever become anything, I mean, half the time I look at them with, maybe little more reverence than I look at myself. You know what I mean? They're not the people that I want to learn from. They're not the success stories whose brains I want to pick. So, it could just be my perspective as somebody who aspires to get into comics, but I really do value the opportunity, to meet a Robert Venditti or a Peter Tomasi or a Scott Snyder and kind of in some way get an understanding of how they approach their craft. That's a big part of it for me. But Aaron VO disagrees with me. He says he disagrees. At the Tiny Con he went to in East Haven, there was also an artist, Adam Walenta, who started a cute kid series with his 8-year-old son. He did a full-page sketch for him. And being a small-time artist writer, he really took the time to talk to him. And although he's not a big name, it was a really personable and enjoyable experience. And that's great. And I don't think there's, it's not me talking down to smaller Comic-Cons. It's just what I'm looking for in a Comic-Con. Are getting the chance to talk to those who I have such high reverence for, those whose craft that I admire and want to try to understand on a different level. You know what I mean? And it doesn't help that like, I prepared myself to, work at Marvel as an editor's assistant. So it's like when I'm looking at art, I'm like poking it apart. You know what I mean? So where like most people might look at a piece of art and they're like, oh, this is cool. I've ruined it for myself. You know what I mean? I've started to see a little bit behind the curtain. So I'd be like, okay, his lighting is this, the camera angle is not, accentuating the pose and all this dumb shit that I really probably shouldn't pay attention to when it comes to appreciation, but I do anyways. So I don't know. That's just me. There's just something totally different about having that experience and the ambiance and atmosphere of a big con, and that name draw, that big name draw, really makes it special. You know what I mean? Like I got to meet Jeff Johns. I've been 5 feet away from Frank Miller. I met Jim Lee last year. I won't get to do that at a small con, and those are the things that I remember and that just ingrain themselves in my head. You know what I mean? I think
just for what it's worth, all of them have been to Calgary. Except for Jeff Johns, to my knowledge. Jim Lee was at Calgary last year.
But Calgary is like one of Canada's biggest, isn't it?
Well, I think it's like second biggest. Yeah, second. Toronto is the biggest.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, like at this point, I'd be willing to fly to Calgary if I got a Comic-Con anytime soon. So, there's got to be some attraction there. But. Oh, yeah. I think we've said pretty much everything on this topic of conversation, unless Boom has anything else that he wanted to get out there.
No, I just want to encourage everybody to check out DC Fandom in August. Check out San Diego at home. Again, I'm going to show the on the screen. Just type this title into your computer. This is the article. It's got all the links to San Diego Comic-Con at home, and you can download. I even downloaded. I got my attendee press badge. I put it on here, and then of course the sign. I'm going to show again the sign. I mean, this is It's good stuff. You hang this on your door so nobody bothers you when you're enjoying San Diego at home. and you can still buy all the merchandise. You can still buy all the merchandise from San Diego, the exclusive merchandise, the shirts, the whatever I'm still looking at it all. I might even order something online to give my support to San Diego Comic-Con, and which frankly I wouldn't have done in past years. So yeah, do that and enjoy it. Just because we got to have some fun, guys. It can't all be about pandemic and politics and riots and protests.
Very, very true. And just to kind of jump off that, if you want a real comic book experience, go check out ComicBoom's channel. You can find the link in the description below. Find some of the finest comic book review content on the interwebs. He's also been doing some really rad changes of scenery outside, which I quite enjoy. I think that looks pretty cool, as much as I love the loft. So make sure you guys go check out ComicBoom. Link in the description below. Go subscribe to him. He's climbing up to 1,000. Boom, do you have anything coming out in the near future and or anything that came out recently that you would recommend the people go to watch?
I've been reviewing Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman. I stick to the Trinity, and I think I might review some indie stuff coming up here. I'm just playing it by ear. I don't, I suppose I should have a schedule. I'm just so busy at work right now, and I sound like a broken record. I would love to spend more time doing this and talking comic books, but I'm very grateful for my life, but there's only so much time in a day, so I'll put out what I can. But
I hear that. Well, make sure you guys go check out Boom below. Davis Comics says, thanks, all interesting combo today. Thanks for stopping by, man. You were a big part of the conversation, and we appreciate all of your input and insight, and same to everybody that joined us here tonight. You guys are always a big part of these Lex Talk Comics live streams, and we hope you had a good time. If you did, please make sure to leave a like down below. That's a big help to us smaller YouTubers. And if you would, please make sure to share this video if you enjoyed it. Boom is on the climb to 1,000 subscribers. Much deserved. Let's get him there. I am also within like 2 handfuls of subscribers from 400. So I would deeply appreciate that if you guys ended up enjoying this video. And of course, I just dropped my Deceased Dead Planet #1 review. The link is in the description below if you need something to watch. That was a fun one. And
great review.
Great
review.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And I also am likely going to review Death Metal #2, as much as I don't want to. I put up a poll on my Twitter, and people seem to overwhelmingly want me to beat the shit out of Death Metal again. So you ask and you shall receive. Final comments. We also have Tim Board saying we need a Boom Hawkman review, but only after 2 beers. I concur.
I'll do one. I'll do that just for you, Tim. I'll review. Actually, Hawkman's been great. If I had more time, I would love to review Hawkman.
Might be the time to drop those Superman reviews for a little bit of Hawkman action. Who knows?
I've actually done like thumbnails of Hawkman in different poses, like cool thumbnails for reviews that I never got the time to do. So maybe I'll do them up and I'll throw them up there. So I'll have some fun with it.
Yeah, Tim and I will have to keep in touch as well and figure out another live stream to have him on. It's been some time, and that was a good time for sure. So we'll keep in touch, Tim. Aaron VO says, thank you, my man. Great stream as always. Thank you for joining us, brother. Thank you for all of the kind wishes, your generosity, and for all of your input. You guys, you're always
giving us the name DarkBoomicon.
DarkBoomicon, courtesy of Aaron VO, man. Coming up 20, 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, or maybe 30, who knows? Just thanks from Tim Board. Thank you, my brother. We appreciate you. But with all of that, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to check out and subscribe to both channels. Click the red subscribe button below for myself and the link to Comic Boom's channel. And thank you guys so much for being a part of this conversation. And we'll catch you next week for the biggest comic book debate on the internet surrounding Watchmen, the full teaser trailer upcoming. So make sure you guys keep an eye out on both channels. But thank you guys so much, and we'll see you again next week on Let's Talk Comics.